My ex-wife attacked me in front of my daughter and was arrested. I regret forgiving her. A few months back my ex-wife came into my house and strangled me while I was holding my daughter Tuyo in my arms. Now I'm struggling with PTSD, depression, and anxiety, and it feels like my inner and outer world is falling apart. I have great resources and support systems and everything I should need to get it together, but I just can't. It all started when we had gotten into an argument about enrolling her into a private daycare/school a few days prior to the incident. She decided to sign her up without my consent, in violation of our original co-parenting plan. It's frustrating to think that a somewhat small incident led to all of this. I confronted her saying I wouldn't be taking her to the school because I did not consent. There is also a religious aspect to this school, and as my ex and I are both atheists, this bothered me. I tried calling the school to disenroll her, but they required both parents' consent to do so. Why they didn't require the same to enroll is beyond me. On our switch-off day my ex came by my house to pick up my daughter as usual. This was our marital home that we were in the process of selling. In our parenting plan, I stupidly allowed her access to the house so she could watch our daughter in a familiar place while the house was being sold. My ex would sometimes give me a heads up, but would usually just show up at the house and let herself in and wait around until my little one was ready. I tried to get her to stop letting herself in, but because the court doc said she had access to the residence during the day, there wasn't much I could do about it beyond asking nicely. My ex also was straight up stealing things from my house that were not declared as hers, but that's another story. When she got to the house on that day, she knew there would be an argument about the school. I wasn't going to stop her from taking my daughter to the daycare/school on her days of custody, but had no intention of doing so myself and fully willing to go to mediation over it. My narcissist of an ex decided she was going to get her way no matter what. My ex came into my room and woke me up after coming into the house earlier than she normally would. She proceeded to deflect, saying she made false accusations of neglect to CYFD. Nothing came of it because, contrary to what my narc of an ex thinks, I am a very capable parent. When I realized the conversation was going nowhere, I just decided to end the conversation and get on with the switch off. This more than upset my ex, who then decided she would go and wake my daughter herself and prepare her for school. I asked her to please wait outside or in another room while I prepare my daughter, which was met with a straight up no, I won't be doing that, and started angrily walking to my daughter's room. At this point fear started setting in. I know that I am a good father, but my ex wore down my self-esteem over years of emotional abuse. I was worried that she was going to take my daughter and I wouldn't see her again, regardless of how irrational it sounds to me now. I ran to my daughter's door to try to create space between my ex, but she pushed me out the way to get in. I was in full panic mode at this point and just wanted to get my daughter away from her, so I quickly moved to her bed to wake her gently before my ex could. I know that adrenaline was high and decisions were made less than 10 minutes, but I'll regret not just letting my ex do what she wants for a long time. When I got to the bed, my ex started screaming and yelling that I shoved her. I didn't. It was dark and we bumped each other, and called in her mom, who was waiting outside. They both stand in the doorway screaming at me to give them my daughter, who at this point is in my arms and mostly asleep still. I couldn't bring myself to just hand her over, so I asked them to please leave as this is inappropriate. I actively asked everyone to please take a step back as things were getting way out of hand, but they couldn't hear me over their own screaming. At this point I decided I just need to get my daughter to a safe, neutral place so that everyone could reset and so she could be isolated from what was already becoming a potentially traumatic experience. I tucked my daughter into my chest, put my head down and tried to walk past them. When I got to the doorway they were standing in, my ex shoved me into the wall, put her hand around my neck and tried holding me down. I'm much bigger, so I was able to break free without touching anyone and get into another room with my daughter still in my arms. At this point I knew I needed to call the police, despite how terrified I was of what might happen. This wasn't the first time she committed violence against me in front of my daughter, but it was the first time since the divorce. I was so afraid that my ex would twist everything and that I would be arrested that I almost didn't even call. I didn't even realize the red marks around my neck from being strangled until after I made the call. The cops came, took statements, and ultimately arrested my ex for battery. I got a temporary restraining order against her immediately after the police took her away and was faced with an impossible decision. What do I do now? I didn't want to fight for full custody. It's important for a developing child to have their parents in their life. It's also important that this kind of abuse never gets transferred to my daughter and that she never has to be exposed to something like this ever again. In the end I decided to drop the restraining order, put some protections in place for my daughter and I, and try to build some semblance of a normal life for her. I regret doing this immensely. Since then my ex has steamrolled me, made random accusations with zero basis, and had her lawyer harass me knowing that I can't afford an indefinite retainer her because I don't have rich family members to help me like she does. To top it off, now she apparently wants to start van living by using her money from the sale of our old house. I don't even know where to start here, but living out of a van is no way for a child to live or grow up. If she wants to do it on her own, I literally don't care, but I'll be damned before I let her subject my daughter to that kind of life. I feel like there is no end in sight, and I question every single decision I made leading up to that day, in the moment, and afterwards. It's been affecting my work and have been struggling to connect with people emotionally. I'm just laying around depressed despite having a new house to put together. I have no idea what the future looks like, and I feel like I lost a part of myself after what happened. I am doing my best, and when I have my daughter everything seems manageable, but when I'm alone in my new house with boxes piled in the garage it feels just as empty inside as I've felt since I realized all of the abuse I went through in that relationship and the journey ahead that I have to face after forgiving her. Edit. Thank you to all those who shared their stories and experience. This is exactly what I was afraid of when I sat in mediation for 9 hours and made probably the hardest decision of my life. I didn't fail my daughter like I've been telling myself, but I have a lot of work ahead of me to make sure that stays true. I did what I thought was right, and one of the lessons I learned is that self-sacrifice isn't always the right solution. For those who mentioned it, I have been in therapy since before the divorce. My mental health was improving significantly until the assault happened. All of my coping skills I've built up have been ineffective, and I'm working to build new ones along with stronger support systems. If I was able to keep up hope in her changing from her abusive ways, then I can absolutely keep up hope that the future will be brighter through my actions to protect my daughter. I may have misjudged, but that doesn't mean I need to compromise who I am.